Good morning, everyone. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay, and it's not too loud for anyone who doesn't like noise. Welcome to worship this morning. You'll notice that things are a little different today. I would hope that you notice that. This morning I'm going to share my experiences with you from the Mama White camp at the Sandy Soto Center. And being in a circle and sharing is a very big part of Indigenous culture, so I thought this morning we would do some sharing in a circle. Our order of service is similar but a little different this morning. You are going to have 2 times to share in the service, and sharing is always optional. Don't feel pressure if you aren't ready, and also take the time and space you need. If you want to say something but you don't know what it is, just hold on to your turn until you're ready to speak, and then share what you need to share. So this is a time to build community, so do what you need to do to be comfortable in this space. So we're going to have our first sharing time at Good News, and we're going to go around, and I would ask that you at least share your name with everybody. So I know that we probably all know each other's names, but there's something powerful about speaking your name into a circle and into a community. So we're going to start by sharing our names and good news. So that can be things you're excited for that's just happened, things that you're looking forward to, things that you're anxious about or worried about, anything that you feel like you want to share in this space. And then we'll move into a time of prayer. And for my message this morning, I'm going to share with you my journals from the time that I was at the Sandy Soto Center. I spent a lot of time back and forth about how to share this experience in a way that was authentic, but not sharing stories that weren't mine to share. So I thought the journals would probably be the best way to do that. But so that you don't get bored of listening to journals, we're going to hear a journal and then sing a verse of a hymn back and forth until we've got all the way through I was there for 5 days, but we'll have 4 times of sharing, because apparently I didn't do a journal on the last day. And then we'll have another time of sharing of anything that stood out from you from that time, or any traditions from your experience that you'd like to share, or just anything that comes to mind. And at that time, I'm going to pass around the basket of cookies. That is a thank you for letting me do something a little different this morning. And you can hold on to the basket and say what you need to say, or you can hold on to the basket and hold some silence, and then you'll just pass it to the next person to signify that your time of sharing is done. So when you share in a circle, you just go around and everyone shares once, and we don't interrupt or talk across each other. We just share and go around to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. So I think that's it for worship this morning. And I did a really bad job of announcements from memory last week, so let me grab this piece of paper. Not a lot different this week. We're not going to have Faith Food this month because Mom's working hard on the annual report. So if you haven't got your annual reports to her, make sure you go home and do that right away. And we have Bible study starting on Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and that'll be on Zoom. And we have book club this week to discuss Keeping My Sister's Secrets. So if you've read that book and you want to join us, that will be here and on Zoom. And of course, choir is always on Thursday, and I still like my all the men in the room have to draw a straw and someone has to join us theory. We could really use some more voices in that back row, and I know that all of you sing really well. And the ladies are going to have tea and talk on Thursday, January 16th at the Bearded Barista. So any women or female identifying people are welcome to join them at 10 o'clock. If any men wanted to sneak in too, I don't think they would turn you away. And they're just going to have a time of fellowship and conversation. And they wanted to make sure that everyone from Stone knew that it wasn't just a Rockwood thing, that anybody could come. Any other announcements that people would like to lift up this morning?
The wellness series is starting pretty soon, and so we are going to need some help with snacks and cleanup. And also on March 1st, I won't be here, so we'll need somebody to help host. And that means making the coffee and tea and setting stuff out. So I have a sign-up sheet. I realize you might not know what you're doing in May, so don't worry about it if you don't want to sign up at this point. But if we can just get started on the first couple at least. and then we'll go from there. So, and if you have any questions, you can just ask me. But I'll send this around and we'll see what it looks like at the end. Thank you.
I might as well build on that because we're looking for stuff for the gift baskets. So we have a number of things already, but we're always looking for more. And Liz, if I can use your example, Liz had a really good idea. She had some, I think it was pumpkin, Liz, in the
I have a ton of pumpkin frozen.
yeah, so she's got a surplus in her freezer. So she's going to convert that into some pumpkin muffins, and we thought those would be really nice to put in the basket. So if you're thinking along a little different line than, you know, we traditionally have honey and so on, that's great, and we want those. But if you're thinking, when I got that email from Liz, I thought, oh, this is creative, I really like this, and sent back right away, yes. So we're really looking forward to the Wellness Series kicking off again on February 8th.
So we're going to save good news until after our gathering music. So I'm just going to ask first, though, if there's any birthdays we should be celebrating this week. So if not, let's center ourselves into this space of worship with some gathering music. So let's move into a time of sharing good news. So I'm going to invite you to share your name, and if you feel comfortable sharing some news with us. So I will start, and then we'll go around the circle. So Mike will be next, so he can be ready for that, and we'll go around the circle. So my name is Lisa, and I was really grateful for the beautiful morning this morning. The snow just covering the trees, and the sun was just kind of perfectly shining through the clouds to make everything just so bright and beautiful this morning, which I really appreciated because I spent most of the week on my computer. I'm doing an intensive course on John this week, and intensive is the word for it, so my brain is tired. So just driving through the beauty of creation this morning was really good for my soul.
Morning, it's Michael. I'm the fearless leader of our group. They're not happy with me at times, but I can be deaf in one ear and keep going forward. Thank you.
So last time I checked, I was Brian. When I got out of the shower, I was still Brian, so I think I'm safe. I've had a little bit of experience with having to have the university vets this weekend, so I'm really thankful for Dr. Winter and Dr. Rao, both wonderful people, and so that's my thank you for the week, and then the beauty of the day.
Hello, I'm Tom, and on the farming note, everything went really well yesterday at the farm, and so we're anticipating calves and lambs in March, and we gotta get ready for that at some point in time.
Yikes. You know, I like this. My name is Edie, and I'm thankful that Ron Hawkins, I guess, did the parking lot again.
Yeah, I'm Jack, and I was gonna say the same thing. I was surprised to see the tire marks there this morning when he'd done the parking lot, or might have been Andy, but looked a lot more like Ron Hawkins' tire marks, so.
Tire marks, I can't even remember people's colors of cars. Well, they're pretty deep, these marks.
He's cleaned up his job. There's no oil all over the place. He had leaks or something.
Or don't all cars leak in some way or another?
Never look a gift horse in the mouth, I say.
That's right.
I'm Bill, and watching the news this morning, you know, of course, the uncertainty around our government and politics is front and center, but also when you look at the strife that's occurring around the world, the wars, the conflicts, also the serious fires in California, that we really are blessed. You know, we're not dealing with, you know, as I said, we've got some uncertainty, but that pales in comparison.
I'm Ed, and I'm grateful that we had good weather for traveling for both Christmas and New Year's, and instead of blizzard or snow or whatever. So, we kind of live in a sweet spot here.
I'm Barb, and I'm happy to share the news that was circulating in our family at Christmas and New Year's, that Adam and Lydia are expecting their third in the middle of June.
Great.
Very good.
We'll be grandparents babysitting till I'm 75.
But Tom, Alec is counting on you in the future, you know, down the road. Great grandpa.
Okay, I'm Mary. Two things. On the farm note, I'm very happy. It was easy to defrost my freezer today. I thought it'd be a big long job, you know, water in the bottom. It's done. And now I can get my beef order from Matt and Arthur, which I picked up in like what, November? I don't know. Early fall. And the other thing is, I found this coat this morning in my laundry section, and I'd lost it for 2 months. I almost bought another one yesterday, and I just didn't really want to spend the money, so I'm so glad I found it. Yeah.
I'm Matthew. I am feeling good. I've been away for a couple of weeks, just doing a road trip and traveling around, seeing family and visiting some farm equipment dealers through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Tennessee, New York, Quebec, back.
That's American dollars, you know.
So it was nice to have a little break and be away. So working way too much this past year. So grateful with the time away, but like so happy to be home too. Especially, yeah, yesterday morning at like just after midnight, I'm going through the snowstorm through Toronto and the roads. I'm grateful that I'm not good driving long distances. I get really sleepy when I'm driving, but I was wide awake because of the snowstorm, so I'm like, I guess it was good that way, but it was kind of a relief to get home and just rest after many hours of driving for, 10 hours straight or whatever. So it's nice to just settle back in, be with all of you.
I'm Mark, and I was just thinking back how cold it's been this week and how hard it is getting out first thing in the morning because I have to get out and look after my chickens. But when I look out the window and I see the birds and the squirrels out there, and they've been up for a lot longer than I have, they are working so hard to scratch out enough food to keep them warm and keep them going, and their antics are just unbelievable. This what the squirrel would do to try to get bird food out of the bird feeder. It was comical to watch him, and it really raised my spirits when I have to get up in the morning and get over it. So that's my good news.
I'm Patty. Little did I know, Matthew, that you were driving in that snow, because we were standing outside the Scotiabank Arena watching it fall, and it was so beautiful. We got in an Uber and we're very happy we weren't driving. Anyway, I'm thankful for safety and family. We saw family, so that's good.
Good morning, I'm Susan, and I'm very thankful for Patty recommending a book that I've just about finished, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, and I'm absolutely just enjoying it. I almost don't want it to end, but anyway, it's a really good read.
Hi, I'm Karen, And day before yesterday, when I was doing my walk in the morning, 2 deer walked across the road. A doe, and it looked like a young one from last spring, and it's always lovely to see that. And I just stopped and watched them walk across the road, and yeah, it's beautiful.
And I'm Liz, and I'm so thankful that Jeff and Christina arrived safely from Quebec. They drove through the storm on Friday. We're here, and it's so great having them.
I'm Eva, and your observation is correct. Jack Murray seen Ron going with his machine. And I'm grateful we were with family last week, and I've lost my touch of how to figure out what somebody wants when they can't quite say it correct when somebody's 2 years old. His granddaughter wanted her carrot, but I couldn't understand it. Finally, I said to Jan, you have to tell me what she wants. And we found it.
I'm Eileen, and I was thankful I didn't have to remove any snow this morning. And I agree with Marg and the squirrels. I boiled those beggars exactly. I like the pepper cones. My daughter can't buy them in Peterborough because they don't believe that they're nice. You're being nice to the squirrels, but I got 4 beggarly black ones, 2 gray ones, and 2 little red beggars that are under my gazebo. I'm overrun with squirrels.
And they'd each had a house and home, wouldn't they?
Yes, they $25 worth of one of those things in 1 week.
So for our folks on Zoom, we'll invite Elsa to share next, and then Marianne can go after if she would like to.
How about my
So
cat?
Elsa, would you like to share anything with us this morning?
Well, I do feel that I was very blessed when this Christmas I actually had my 4 children here, because one was in Sault Ste. Marie, one is in Montreal, the other one in Niagara on the Lake, and the last one, of course, my eldest daughter is close by here in Bellwood. So it is rather nice to have a group of family attached to them. So I'm at this point a great grandmother, and it surprises me generations before this, at least from my Dutch family. I don't think we ever reached that stage. So it sounds as if we are prolific enough to keep to become more and more. Well, at 93 and a half, I'm quite glad that I still have my wits about me. And that to me means an awful lot, because then I can still hopefully help others when they have emotional problems or other things. So thank you. That is all I have to say right now.
We're going to try our best to light our candle. See, today the lighter's working, but the candle doesn't want to light.
Yeah. Oh.
One or the other.
Yeah.
The blast, and then they picked up and took it to the cats.
We light our candle for the good news we've shared, the good news in our hearts, and the good news that wherever we go, God is with us. Let's move into a time of prayer. God, we give you thanks for each person gathered here and the wisdom and knowledge that each of us carry. Help us to be fully present in this space so this time of worship may invite us into deeper relationship with you, with each other, and with all of creation. Amen. Do we want to sit or stand for the hymn? Stand. I got it half and half. Let's go with, if you'd like to sit, and if you'd like to stand, as we join in singing This Is God's Wondrous World. Our scripture readers this morning come from Acts 2, 46 to 47, and Psalm 104, 24 to 30. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. The sea, great and wide, creeping things innumerable are there, living things both great and small. There goes the ships and Leviathan that you formed to sport in it. These all look to you to give them their food in due season. When you give to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are filled with good things. When you hide your face, they are dismayed. And when you take away their breath, they die and return to their dust. When you send forth your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the ground. Bless these readings to our understanding and our faithful living. Amen. So we'll be singing More Voices number 12, Come Touch Our Hearts, one verse at a time. So I think we'll remain seated for this. So please join me in verse 1. Strong enough So day 1, breakfast is open from 8 to 9 so that people can arrive at any time. I was amused to see that breakfast this morning was oatmeal after eating it every day at Iona. The self-serve breakfast was a lot more comfortable for me though, because it meant that I could be in control of my portion size and not have to worry about wasting food. I imagine being in control of your portion would also be comforting for anyone who struggled with food security or disordered eating. We don't always acknowledge how our relationship with food impacts our comfort and community. Creating a space where people can meet their needs without having to inform people who they don't know yet goes a long way to making someone feel more welcomed. Of course, sometimes the practicality of feeding a large crowd needs to be taken into consideration. Lunch and dinner were part served foods and part self-served foods. I suspect this was to make sure that there was enough for everybody. We began a circle around the fire. The knowledge keeper led us in a smudging. This is a ritual that I've only been a part of a few times, and I've always been anxious that I was going to do it wrong. I understand the spiritual significance and that it is an important and sacred part of Indigenous culture, and I want to honor that. So this morning, as I watched the sage burning as it was carried around the circle, I realized that if I really wanted to honor the tradition, I had to let go of my fear and worry and be fully present in the experience of my body. I am and feel more comfortable in a culture where my mind and body are treated as separate. Not quite on that level of Gnosticism where a body is seen as irrelevant, but thoughts and knowledge were certainly a larger part of my experience, particularly my religious experience, than feelings and movement of my body. It is a good thing that I was about halfway through the circle because it gave me time to unpack all of this and feel much more grounded and present than I ever had before when it was my turn to do the smudging. In the morning, I attended a workshop on sausage making, and the woman leading talked about the importance of using the whole animal. So cooking sausage is a great way to use the parts that aren't ideal for other cuts of meat. We were making turkey sausages, so she talked about how in the restaurant she ran, she would use the breast for other meals and then grind the tendons and dark meats for sausage. She boiled the bones for soup to make sure that the whole animal was being used and that its sacrifice was being honored. Making sure that nothing... Preparing food can be a powerful spiritual practice, as it forces you to live in the moment, to work with the ingredients on hand, and be mindful of the nutritional needs of the people that you're cooking for. In the afternoon, I attended a soap making workshop, and while the woman leading the workshop explained the process, she shared how making soap for people is a great way to care for them because you can adjust their needs to their specific needs of their bodies. She also shared the different ways that you can color the soap with natural ingredients so that you can make it good for the earth and so that you know exactly what's in your soap. In the evening, there was a drum circle where the woman led us in singing with her drum, and several people got to play on the big grandfather drum. This was a very big drum. It was made out of a bison hide from someone's farm that they brought and prepared the drum for the Sandy Soto Center. It's a very beautiful drum, but I didn't take a picture of it. But it was so wonderful to see all of the young people sitting around the drum and hitting it and keeping the rhythm. And the day that they talked me into joining, I did not keep the rhythm. There's a reason I don't play the drums. But it was very generous of them to let me try it, knowing that it was probably going to be a failure. But the interesting thing about the music was that it's all very repetitive and call and response so that everyone can learn and pick it up without having to have a hymn book in front of you and try to follow notes that maybe you don't know how to read. So everybody sang out and the singing was loud and beautiful and powerful. And it just drew us together in such a significant way. One of the pieces of sharing the songs was sharing the traditions around the song, and the woman who was sharing songs also shared from her own experience and what they meant in her life. And it added such a richness and complexity to the music and to the time of sharing together. The honesty and openness in that space was incredibly moving, and it made me reflect on my own journey of getting to know and love myself and be open to what I was feeling. We closed that evening with a campfire and marshmallows. It was really interesting to see where people's shared experiences crossed over and where we had differences in what we thought a campfire looked like or how to build a s'more, because apparently I'm the only one who knows you're supposed to put peanut butter on them. I don't know if that's a Waterloo region thing, but that is the way that I was always taught you were supposed to make them. And so it was just so fun to get to know people in that relaxing environment. Relaxing around the campfire reminded me of how nature draws us together, and we are all connected through the earth. And in order to find peace in ourselves, we have to acknowledge that outward connection to all things. So let's join in singing verse 2 of Come Touch Our Hearts. Day 2. This morning's sharing circle, we were asked to share a highlight from the day before. Everyone had a chance to share however much or little they would like to according to their comfort level. The simple act of sharing in community drew people together. People who needed to share deeply from their souls had the space to do so. Their sharing and emotional vulnerability was held by the circle. I often hear my cell phone is interrupting with the microphone. So people who needed to share deeply from their souls had the space to do so. Their sharing and emotional vulnerability was held by the circle. I often hear the scripture, where 2 or 3 are gathered, I am there, quoted. But I sometimes think that we forget that gathering is a type of action. It isn't just about being in the same place as someone. It is the intentionality of drawing together that allows us to sense God's presence in community. In this morning's activity, I worked on making a rattle out of bison pelt. It was very thick and hard to cut. I felt a pressure to work quickly, which was 100% my own insecurity, because only one person could cut at a time as we were working on the same section to not waste any material. After cutting, we had to punch holes around the outside to prepare for sewing. It took pretty much all of my strength to squeeze that punch and get the holes all the way through. Sometimes I had to do it twice just to get it through both layers. As we were lamenting the struggle of working with tough materials, the man guiding us explained that the activity and the effort of making the rattles honored the blood, sweat, and tears that we were putting into it, honored the sacrifice of the animal who gave its life so that we could create these rattles that are used for ceremonies. As I was sewing, it was bringing back memories of my sewing as a child with my grandma and with my parents preparing leather crafts for their scout camps. In the beginning, I was enjoying the repetitive motion of the sewing and chatting with people around me. But as I continued, my hands got increasingly sticky from working with the sinew, which made the task a lot more difficult and really uncomfortable for someone who has sensory challenges. I was becoming increasingly frustrating because, especially on the second time around, when it took that extra push to get through the material, and often with the help of pushing the needle on the picnic tables to get it all the way through, it was just getting increasingly challenging, and I wanted to make sure that I got it done on time, and so I was feeling a lot of pressure. And as we were sewing, the leader explained that the rattles were being made to be given as gifts. When you make something in the community, you gift it to someone else, and then at that time, they are supposed to take it into the woods and fast for 4 days and 4 nights to honor the sacrifice of the animals before they can use it in ceremonies. And then I felt a lot of pressure that I was going to give somebody something that they have to go and fast for 4 days. So I was discussing this at another time with one of the women, and she said, doesn't necessarily have to be 4 days of fasting. You go to the elder and they tell you what you need to do to honor that sacrifice. So it gave me a little bit of peace knowing that I could give this to someone and it wouldn't be a huge burden for them. But also, I don't know when I will find the right person to give the rattle to. So it's also an activity that grounds you in trust of the Spirit to guide you to that moment of, I've made this thing and I'm holding it for the right person in the right place of time. In the afternoon, I participated in sewing medicine pouches, first out of cotton bags to hold the medicine, and then leather to carry them and keep them safe. While sewing the bags, I was able to show the girl next to me how to sew, and she was very excited to get to do it on her own, which was a challenge for me because I had to only verbally explain how to do it because she wanted to put every single stitch in herself. And it's a lot easier for me to show you how to do something and then let you do it after. But it's just a really good reminder that when you're in leadership, you don't always get to do things your way. You have to find a way to adapt to care for the needs of the people around you. I also got to help a young boy with punching the leather. He really wanted to do it himself, but he just wasn't strong enough to squeeze the punch and hold the leather at the same time. So I held it for him, and he was able to use the two hands to squeeze the punch. And it's that, like, preparing things in community just lets us all use our gifts to the best of our ability. After our pouches were all sewn, we received medicines of sweetgrass, tobacco, sage, and cedar. We were taught about their meanings and how to carry the pouch in the proper way. After sewing, I checked on my rattle, but it wasn't quite ready to fill with sand and shape. You have to soak it so that the material is flexible enough to be shaped into a rattle. So I decided it was a good time to go for a walk. It was a nice walk around the river, and I got some great photos, but I didn't find myself going to that place of stillness that I usually get on photo walks, probably because I was running away from flies and mosquitoes. But it wasn't until about 3/4 of the way around the path that I felt the shift in my spirit and a profound sense that I had been in this moment before. It struck me while I was watching a dragonfly land on a branch, and I was sure that I had seen it before. I trust that these moments happen to me when I'm on the right path, and this moment occurred in the sense that I was meant to be here and learning in this time and space. In this evening, we sang drum songs and cooked bannock on the campfire, and there was a wonderful feeling of camaraderie and play amongst everyone gathered. There was something so profound about sitting around the campfire and just being present to one another without a set agenda. Let's join in singing verse 3. On day 3, we began the morning with a sharing circle around the fire as we did every morning. It was nice to see people's confidence grow as they shared more into the circle. Some of the teens were still speaking very quietly, and it was really hard to hear what they were sharing. But it was really interesting to see them not be pressured to speak up. It allowed them to share at their comfort level. I think sometimes we worry too much about the words and not enough about just being present with one another. In the morning, the options for activities were t-shirt printing or visiting the garden where they grow a lot of the food that is served at the center. And I started with the t-shirt printing. And although I was over there first, myself and my classmate Linda went to see if they needed any help. I didn't feel any urgency in getting things done, so I just waited until there was a natural break. And unhurriedly brought my prints to the porch of my cabin. I stopped to take a picture of a couple of cute mushrooms, saw a frog hopping through the grass. In the busyness of life, so often we can forget to take time to rest. But if I don't truly rest, my body begins to shut down. Not resting, of course, is a great hubris because even God rests on the seventh day. We need to be in tune with the natural rhythms of life and connect to the rhythms of our minds, bodies, and souls. Normally, I would take Mondays off, but to be present to this week, I had to push through and find other moments of rest and quiet space, like this morning, which was very important for my physical and mental health, especially because we would be going into the sweat lodge this afternoon. It was an honor to be a part of that sweat lodge ceremony in the Eagle Lodge, to learn more about the four directions, to join our voices in song and our hearts in prayers. I was a little anxious about my ability to join given my allergies, but was so grateful for this lodge keeper who used medicines that allowed me to be present and was just so approachable when I needed to make sure that it would be a safe space for me and that I wouldn't be interrupting the ceremony when I was trying to take care of my own needs. She just made me feel so welcome and comfortable and able to participate in that space. Even though I wasn't totally sure that my lungs could handle the heat and the steam, I went into the lodge, but she kept it nice and gentle for all of us who were there for the first time and talked us through it so that I was able to stay for the whole ceremony, which also might have been because I was sitting in the furthest space from the door. So basically there's four stages where they bring in more rocks and more heat, and so if you really need to, you can leave in between those stages, but to do so you have to go all around the circle, so I would have had to crawl over everybody's feet, so that probably helped me to give that little push to say, I can do this, I can stay here because I cannot crawl over everybody's feet. But I was really glad that I did because it was a really powerful and healing experience for me, and the recognition that our ancestors are with us and the acknowledgement of the spirits of the rocks and the other pieces used in the ceremony was deeply moving. In the new creed, we repeat the words, we are not alone. We live in God's world who has created and is creating. But how often do we actually pause to reflect and think about what that means? At lunch with my classmate Linda, we were talking to a man about how people who are agnostic and atheists often have a very narrow vision of what God is and who God is. I don't think that I could believe in a God either who is off in the sky somewhere and not a part of things. It's so important to me to acknowledge God's spirit in all things. So today, and this day as well, I am surrounded by the beauty of God's creation, and for that I am beyond grateful. Let's sing more verses, number 12, verse 4. Day 4 and 5. At today's sharing circle, there were a lot of big feelings coming out of yesterday's sweat lodge. People shared deeply and held space for each other's pain. We closed the circle with a song that gave space to acknowledge that what each person offered into the circle. This was such a beautiful way to close the moment and prepare us for the day. I think too often we get caught up in feeling like we need to say or do the right thing. Joining our voices in song acknowledged where people were at and left room for what each individual was feeling in a way that words never could. This morning's activity was to make medicine bags. The woman leading the activity was actually not very confident in using sewing machines that weren't her own, so I set them all up and I helped people make their bags. And they also wanted to send 11 bags to a group in Japan that they've been connected with for many years, who support the Sandy Soto Spiritual Center. And so we cut out and sewed an extra 11 bags. They wanted the colors of the four directions on the bags, so we sewed ribbons together so that you could have two sides and four colors and have your ties represent the four directions. I knew that getting 11 bags done in one day with a lot of other things going on was going to be a bit of a stretch, especially because somehow I ended up being pretty much the only one doing them. But I was very grateful for my classmate who ironed and prepped them all so that I could just whip them through the sewing machine. And just as the last person was going through the supper line, I got the last one done and could sneak into that line. And I was actually really grateful for the opportunity to do that for them, because I was looking for some way to give back after receiving so much wonderful learning and healing throughout the week. And so it was just such a gift to get to help out in that way and be part of a fairly significant moment of the week. Friday morning we closed with more singing and a final circle of sharing. I know I will carry the connections that I made and the learning that was gifted with me as I move from that place. Sing our final verse of Come Touch Our Hearts. So we're going to go around the circle one more time to share any reflections that you would like to share from what I've shared, or something that is significant in your culture and learning. Maybe it's how you use food on the land and preserve it for the year. Maybe it's your favorite holiday tradition that you just carried out this year. Whatever comes to mind is the right thing to say in this space. So don't put pressure on yourselves. If you don't want to speak, you don't have to speak, but just say what's on your heart and let that be good and right. I'm going to pass around the baskets so that we can kind of see whose turn it is to share and whose turn it is to speak. So as you're holding the basket, you can speak or hold silence, and that is your space, and then you'll pass it on to the next person when you're done so that they know that it is their turn. In the basket there are cookies and apples, and so if you're welcome to take one, and if you really want to, you can eat it now. If you want to take it home with you, you can do that too. Those are yours, and that is where I'm going to start with my sharing, because at the Sandy Soto Center, I just realized I never turned this back on. There we go. So at the center, the food was, a lot of it was grown on the property. Whatever they could grow in the garden, they used from the garden, and they were very intentional about making sure that all of the food that the land was offering was being used in a good way. So whenever you weren't doing an activity, you were invited to chop up apples that they were dehydrating, so they could be eaten throughout the year. They had a garden with all kinds of good veggies and herbs and anything you could want. So the food there was absolutely fantastic. And not vegan, which was a nice change from Iona. And so it was just really wonderful to have that interaction with the place by being nourished by the land that you were on. So these cookies are made with local ingredients, more or less. Some of them came from the grocery store, but I did use applesauce with apples collected on the 7th line, so they're nice and close from here. And applesauce cookies was one of my grandma's go-to recipes. She loved canning and preserving food, and she always spent a lot of time making peaches and applesauce, and my grandma would come home after her hours of work and say, I could buy that for 99 cents at the grocery store. But for her, it wasn't about the cost, it was about preserving the food from our local space. And so then in the winter, she would use that applesauce she made to make these cookies. Sometimes she would use the leftover bacon fat as the fat for the cookies, just to make sure it was being used, which was not my favorite. And then other times she would use other oils or fats, just whatever was on hand to make sure things were being used in the best way possible. So I was excited to get to share those with you today. I will say that they're supposed to have golden raisins and they have currants because I wasn't paying attention, but they should still taste good. So I hope that you enjoy this little bit of my family tradition.
2 cookies for the monster.
Okay.
I like the different cookies and spice different cookies. A month or half ago, I gathered up so many desserts. It'll be probably into the early spring. Good job, things keep good.
So I'm inhaling actually the smell of the cookies right now when I pull in the basket, so I'm just warning you as it comes around, I'm sure it will increase. So 2 things came to mind when Lisa was sharing this morning, that the importance of using all the parts of the animal, and that tradition, and making sure nothing is wasted. And when I was teaching out west, I knew a lot of people who were hunters, so bear meat and so on. And I wasn't a hunter, but they found a way to include me in that circle. Like I would go out with them on the walks ahead of time when they're scouting out of season. And in particular, my school custodian, Sully, taught me how to prepare like moose steak and so on properly, so that it tasted to its very best. And that was a gift of their sharing, to include me in their circle. So that was number 1. And the second thing that came to mind, a lot of you know when if you read a reflection piece or something from me, the Catholic theologian Henry Nouwen is very important to me. And I will read Henry Nouwen a lot. And he has, one of the books, he has a whole chapter on, you can find God in Scripture or in books that you read of any type, but God is in nature everywhere, and that's equally as good to your path to the Holy One. So those 2 things came out of the sharing this morning.
Just to elaborate on what Brian was saying there, is that I do hunt, and so it's one of my times when I do my thinking, is when I'm out. It's not always getting something, it is, as I tell people, I always ask you, did you get anything? And I go, it's hunting, not shopping.
Well, talk about traditions. I have been making chili sauce since we were first married, and I decided I better teach Lisa how to do this, and she eats it with us, right? So that's what we've been working on the last 2 summers, so. What do you want to say, Jack?
I have nothing really to say. I'll pass it on.
I guess I was thinking back to growing up in a farm, and every spring, of course, you'd be planting a crop, and that was a real positive time in the year. And I think back to a Stan Rogers song, "The Field Behind the Plow," where he talks about putting another season's promise in the ground, and that certainly, if you were ever farming or grew up on a farm, that was how you looked at the spring.
The cookies are on top. I guess following along on the gardening theme, I built for my wife a second cold frame in the garden. We're getting good use out of it. And that's why I enjoy preparing the garden, all the ingredients that have to go in the springtime, helping out. We did have a bumper crop of apples 2 years ago, so we've still got applesauce in the freezer.
Thinking back to, I believe it's the first reflection that Lisa did making the turkey sausage, and I couldn't help but go back to October when we had the, Bill and John did the marathon turkey cutting, and then we did the marathon turkey soup, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. How much we made, and I think we used pretty much every part of it, and what we didn't use, our barn cats were really glad to have, so, and it just makes me think of the community experience we have when we participate in, whether it's doing things for the takeout suppers or for Carl's, getting ready for Carl's celebration, like whatever we do, what we do in community is so important. Gives in many ways.
Thank you for the apple. So the part that mostly, when you started talking about rest, Lisa, that's the part that jumped out at me. I'm not really sure what happened to you. You said you didn't get your rest, but then you did a sweat lodge. I'm not sure what the message is there, but I know that for myself, I am struggling between finding balance, I guess, to prioritize things. And rest is very important to me, and I'm a little worried I might have to give up rest, and I'm not sure if I should.
Oh, gosh. Oh, no.
No. And then the other thing I will say is, since applesauce is a theme, I do have food sensitivities, and one of the nicest things at Matt and Arthur's place is all the applesauce, and I can eat applesauce. I eat a lot of applesauce, and I do want to contribute too. So it's lovely to hear how you were given that opportunity to contribute and recognize it that way. That was a good start. Thank you.
I have two memories, hopefully it won't go too long, but when you were talking about working with the boy and punching the holes to make the rattle, it just made me think, it was only yesterday, but I had a friend and her child come over yesterday, Ewan, he's like 8 or something, but it's always a reminder when you have kids around, like, it's important to, as part of your rest and enjoyment of community, to take time to be with kids and the joy that you can find in that, and some of the, like, traditions that kind of emerge unexpectedly. So we ended up going, taking our sleds and going up the road to the Venom tract, where we discovered this winter this amazing sledding hills through the woods, and it was just so much fun to I guess be part of that kind of tradition you do as kids, but you can still do with other kids that come into your life as you get older, and you can still have that fun and those reminders to be playful and just get out and enjoy the natural world and the beauty of the snow and all that. So I was immediately thinking of that when you said the story, and then also feeling that gratitude of, like, having those traditions and those times to just have fun together. The other thing I was just thinking about when we were talking about, Indigenous practices, and also, like, not wasting what you might have around the farm and that sort of thing. A few years ago, I was determined to try doing some leather, making some leather from the hides from the cattle that we raise at the farm, and discovering that we have it's unusual. Down the road we have a place where you can take hides to get tanned, just a few lines over, and I wanted to give that a try, but I had to get the hides from the abattoir after they had skinned the animals and bring them back to the farm, and I had to do the salting myself of the hide before you take it to the tannery, because it might sit there for 4 months before they get to processing it. And it was a very surprising experience. I was like, got the hides back, it was getting late, I felt like, gotta salt them quickly, because there's like, raw flesh on the back of the skin, right, from the animal, so you don't want it to sit too long. and ended up just doing this myself, like late at night in the drive shed and on my hands and knees, like laying the hide out, and then you like working the salt into the hide, and thinking that it would be the most disgusting job you'd have to do, and turned out to be this like surprisingly spiritual experience that made me feel like I was something in me was like connecting with ancestors or traditions that came before me, whether it, indigenous traditions or maybe traditions that have been part of our farming communities. But I think it's important to have new experiences and to be open to those unexpected encounters with God or nature or your past, even when you totally don't understand it. I was thinking about that experience too when you were talking, and it's good to have those crafting kind of experiences or those connections cross-culturally that we can experience new things and discover new parts of our spiritualities or connection to each other in nature. Thanks for the cookies.
I was thinking about traditions, and traditions have been passed on to me from family members, and I think of both paternal and maternal grandparents, my own mother and her sister, and Carl's family. They were all great gardeners. I know my maternal grandmother, she and my grandfather lived on a farm, and it was pretty much her duty to run the garden, and she had a huge garden, and she picked berries. She would be up early in the morning picking little baskets of berries that would be sent into town to be sold for, started out at 5 cents a box, and then it went up to 10 cents a box. I don't think she got anything more than 10 cents a box for her produce, but she used that money to buy whatever they needed, and I just remember her telling me about getting up so early in the morning and thinking, it would be nice if the girls would get up and help me out and do this, but usually by the time they got up, I had it all done. She had some great stories to tell about gardening. And Carl loved her stories, and he loved to garden, and his people loved to garden, so I kind of hoped that my kids would pick up on that, and actually, over time, they have. Robin has a very small yard, but she does have little flower beds that she plants vegetables in and raises them. She didn't do a very good job this year because she was just a little bit too busy. And Paul and Brianna have done a wonderful job taking over where Carl left off, tilling the garden and helping me plant it. And Brianna is a wonder at digging potatoes, I tell you. What I did in a whole afternoon, she did in an hour when it came to digging the potatoes. But they're just, they're jumping in and helping me with all these things and thinking about other ways that they can do it. And even our son Matthew, who used to come home from church and say to me, Mom, there's a lady at church, and all she ever asks me is, how is our garden doing? And I don't care how the garden's doing. She always asks that same question, and I always keep saying, oh, it's doing fine. But it surprised me greatly when he and his wife started to do a little container gardening, and they've moved up to Holstein the last little while, and they have expanded on their container gardening, and they're quite proud of what they raise and can put away or in the freezer or just in the fridge and use it. So I'm very proud that they're carrying on, even though they're doing it in a small way. I think they're carrying on that tradition that was handed down to me and to their dad, and I just hope it goes forward with their children too. Thank you, Lisa, for the cookies.
Thanks, Liz. I'm just really glad that you had that experience there, especially after Iowa, you know. It sounds wonderful. I'm really, really glad you were able to do that.
So, a tradition that has stuck with me all my life. So my mother was from the Bruce Peninsula, Lion's Head, and my mother's family, her parents and her grandparents and great-grandparents were chased off their land in the Outer Hebrides and ended up in the Bruce Peninsula, which has got to be the worst farming land in the whole world, but that's where they ended up. And so spent a lot of time up in Lion's Head with my family, and my mother and my uncle grew up there, obviously, and they had a lot of friends who were still in the area. So our tradition was at the end of the summer, we'd go to the Flat Rocks, which are between Lion's Head and Whippoorwill, and we'd have a bonfire, and then the next day we would leave to go back to Toronto. And there would be people there of all ages, and all kinds of history that I was aware of. And we would sit there with this bonfire, and it would be very dark. Sky would be filled with stars. The water would be, Georgian Bay would be lapping up on the rocks. And it just felt like the best place in the whole world. I didn't need anything more than to just sit there with those people and just listen to them talk. And there'd be some singing, and we had some musicians in the family. And sometimes when I get really stressed or worried about something, I'll just sit back in a quiet spot and go back there. And a lot of those people are no longer with us, but they're all buried in the little cemetery, Eastmore Cemetery, outside of Lion's Head. And my parents are buried there. So Gord and I will go up on occasion, and I'll have a visit with all of those people again. So it's just something that has never left me, thank goodness. Thank you.
So as I was listening to Lisa talk about all the different things that she was taught to make and whatever, I was reminded that, I think it was back in the 80s, can't quite remember, but I decided to do a drum making workshop up near Owen Sound. And what was really interesting was it wasn't very long after we started, and the man who was leading the workshop came to me and said, "You gotta let go of your perfectionism." Which of course was something I was working on at the time, and I thought, oh darn. Clearly I'm not doing a very good job, and it's still, it's something that has not served me well. And so I was kind of thinking, I wonder how I would be, doing some of those things that that Lisa was doing, and would I be able to just let go, and like you had said, you tried to numerous times, to just be part of the experience. So that was probably a good reminder to me, but thank you for the cookies.
Well, talking of tradition, my mom, as long as I can remember, always made a steamed Christmas pudding.
Yes.
And it had to be always on December the 4th for some reason, I don't know why. And it was always served warm with brown sugar sauce over it. So one year, my sister decided that we should clean up the first course dishes before getting the pudding out. Well, before long, there's Dad at the end of the table with a spoon in one hand, a fork in the other hand, and saying, "Where's the pudding?" And so this year, I took all the ingredients, the apples, the carrots, the potatoes, and the dried fruit, and got Mom to help me make this year's pudding.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lisa.
My mother was raised on a farm, and she quite often knew about using all parts of the animals. But when she served certain meats, I suddenly became a vegetarian. Thank you.
Being as I've blasted this line, I've enjoyed listening to everybody. I can write, time is gone.
Elsa, do you have anything you want to share with us? Elsa, did you want to share with us?
Well, I heard plenty and I was duly educated. I find that much of the traditions that I had with my family were both mixed. It was what was in South America, where I was born, in Argentina, and then that which was from Holland. And so St. Nicholas, which I mentioned on Facebook once, and said, well, I had the wrong date, which was the 7th. Now that was important to me as a child, because it was St. Nicholas, his servant was black, but it wasn't a real black person. It was someone who had shoe polish on his face in order to make him dark. So I found that was odd to have someone representing that particular thing at the time. But those were very forming years for me, because at 10, of course, you were too old to be part of that. So it was both a growing time and also a letting go of things. So that is the part that I think I'd like to keep uh, alive. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful sharing. Eileen is not wrong that we're a little over time, and I do have to get to Rockwood, so I don't want to rush the end of our experience. It is actually a very Indigenous thing to ignore the time and be, and Rockwood's just going to have to deal with that. But if somebody could just put the laptop and stuff away so that I can run out the door, I would greatly appreciate that. And you can leave it in here because we'll be using it for book club on Wednesday. But thank you so much for your openness and your sharing and your being present in this time and space. Let's close this time with a prayer. Holy God, we know that through your word, all creation came into being. We give you thanks that you can be found in all your creation. In our hearts, we sing again and again the words of this morning's opening hymn, "This is God's wondrous world," as a testament of our love for you and all that you breathed into existence. God of wisdom, we give you thanks for the elders and leaders of the Sandy Soto Spiritual Center, for their teaching, for their patience, and for their caring. May you continue to grant them peace and serenity as they open the sacred space to all people. We freely acknowledge that we have much to learn from our Indigenous siblings about nurturing each other and respecting everyone and everything in creation. Help us when we struggle to acknowledge the hurts that were inflicted in the past and for our failure to fully embrace reconciliation. God of compassion, we lift up to you people who are displaced because of war, famine, wildfires, and other natural disasters. People who are detained in inhuman conditions, those who are facing discrimination and persecution because of their religious or cultural beliefs, those who do not feel safe because of their sexual orientation or gender, those who feel hopeless associated with inadequate housing and economic strife. Comforter God, your people have cried out to you this week, the lonely, the ill, the disenfranchised, the forgotten, the dying, and those who mourn. In the silence of our hearts, we pause to lift up to you our own sources of hurt and discomfort, the needs of those close to us, and our concerns for the wider community. May we be comforted by the healing balm of your loving embrace, secure in the knowledge that you are with us. Sustaining God, we give you thanks for our congregations of Rockwood and Stone, for each person gathered here, and for those who are not able to be with us this morning. May your gentleness sustain us this week. In closing, we pray together the words that your Son taught us to pray so long ago. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. For our closing hymn this morning, I wanted to kind of honor the tradition of the singing with the drum. Obviously, I don't have the skills or the knowledge to lead in drum song, and I couldn't think of a way to incorporate that in a way that was honoring tradition. So I thought I would go back to one of our traditions, which is singing around the campfires. So I'm going to lead you in our last hymn a cappella, and it's going to be great. You can do it. Sing loud, sing proud. Pretend it's dark and nobody can see you, and you're around the campfire so nobody knows it's you singing, because I think that's why that works so well. The first time through, I'll sing one line and you'll sing it back to me, and we'll go through the lines that way. The second time, I'll sing 2 lines, and then you can sing them back. And then we'll sing it together twice all the way through. And the words will be on the screen, so you don't have to worry about that. We're going to sing Like a Rock, which is a great Lydia Good song. She's a United Church musician who has given us some really good interactive hymns. So there's the actions. If you want to do the actions, you're welcome to. I may or may not do them, just depending on how my brain's working. So, and if you want to just not do them, that's always okay. So we'll stand together so that we can have our, if you want to, if you need to sit, sit. But standing just opens up your lungs and helps you sing nice and loud. So let's sing Like a Rock. Now when I say one line is actually 2 lines on the screen. So, like a rock, God is under our feet. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like the river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like the river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. So 2 lines this time. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like the river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like the river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like a starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like a starry night sky, God is over our head. Like a sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like the river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. As we prepare to leave this time and space, may we carry the wisdom of the circle with us, the reminder that each voice matters, the vulnerability that creates connection, and the spirit that moves among us when we gather with intention. May the Creator sustain you and the Spirit guide you. May the presence of Christ empower you to live with open hearts, grounded bodies, and generous spirits. Go now, knowing that you are not alone. We live in God's world, a world being created and recreated through love. Amen.
Oh.